I never imagined that purchasing a home would lead to conflict, not for financial gain, not over the place, but over the person I was permitted to be. You don't see betrayals like that in movies. No matches that scream, no doors slammed. Simply put, the methodical, emotionless way that others organize your life as if you don't even exist. Allow me to explain. Rachel is my name. My age is 32. Planner for finances. Extremely frugal. Someone who keeps track of every dollar as if it were a living entity. Half joking, half not. My coworkers refer to me as a spreadsheet soul. I don't mind that though, since numbers were never favorites. When they smile at one child, they don't ignore the other. When someone else succeeds, they don't cheer them on. I was the younger sister in a household that always seemed to be the center of attention when I was growing up in Olympia, Washington. Lara, my sister, is 4 years my senior. Golden child. I laughed aloud. Large hair, greater visibility. Lara was a Times Square billboard. If I were a post-it note affixed to the refrigerator, every victory she experienced was a family occasion. Prom pictures, flower-adorned dance recitals, and weekend getaways just because. Me. The as long as you pass celebratory dinner was given to me. Keep quiet. Economical. Forgotten by Monday. I wasn't resentful, though. Not at all. I only discovered early on that I would need to give myself a pat on the back. So I did. I had a job, saved, said nothing more than yes. Didn't travel unless it cost less than $100 or was for work. Didn't purchase coffee. My automobile wasn't upgraded. I lived as, if tomorrow required me to, for nearly 10 years. Do of a dream I had. Not a mansion. Not a condo with a rooftop bar and a view of the city. A modest home with a garden. Somewhere I could relax and breathe in the mornings while sipping coffee. And I was at last close after years of saving and not asking for anything. Silence was to be maintained. Purchase the home. Once the ink was dry, let the family know. However, the cosmos. It is unconcerned with your plans. The meal was a Sunday meal. The same old procedure. Chicken on a grill, bread with garlic, informal mayhem. Lara was complaining about rent once more, supposedly. Their 2-bedroom apartment in the heart of the city was a zoo. Everything was becoming too much for her children. Her sanity was being ruined by the traffic. I gave a nod, listened, remained silent, right up till dessert. I had my phone looking through listings, and the one was there, tiny wooden, and sheltered from the late spring light on a porch. And I unintentionally grinned for a moment. "What's making you smile so broadly?" Lara sipped her wine and inquired. I stopped. Then I said it. "Next month, I'm purchasing a home." There was silence in the room, as though I had just admitted to robbing a bank. With a surgical precision, my mother set down her fork. "You're purchasing a home? Alone?" "Yes," I said. "This is what I've been saving for. I'm prepared." "You didn't consider speaking with us first." That was my mother once more. She had a tight yet courteous voice. The way individuals speak once they've already concluded you're mistaken. "I didn't take any loans," I said. "Didn't ask for help. I've just been working toward it," the speaker said. Lara interrupted, speaking louder than necessary. "Yeah, but shouldn't you consider the long term when purchasing a home? You'll need room. For visitors. For others. I gave her a look. Next at my mother, even though no one said. Their faces spoke everything. Suddenly, I came to a realization this has nothing to do with me purchasing a home. They were looking for a landing spot, a larger house, for Lara's children, for weekends spent with family. And the only one who could afford it was me. My phone lit up as I was preparing mortgage documents that evening. Mom texted me, "Lovely 4-bedroom home in Brookside. The kids love the yard, large kitchen, near Lara's house. Look at it. Next, Lara, perfect arrangement for guests. You might even be able to work from the office upstairs. Additionally, my children would have room to run about." I answered simply, "I'm searching for something more compact, quieter." Lara's reaction, just one word, "Why?" For days, the why lingered in my chest. since I was aware of the solution. However, I was also aware that they wouldn't accept it. Mom called 3 days later. I found the one, Rach Maple Street, large yard, 2 complete restrooms, excellent schools. The cost simply decreased. I listened to the quiet. Mom, I whispered softly, I'm not going to buy a house for a family I don't have. She refrained from laughing. One day, you'll want to, she added. And Lara would benefit from the assistance. That apartment is where she is drowning. It dawned on me then. They weren't giving any clues. They had plans. And the plan was me. Every single one of those listings, all those minor recommendations, they weren't suggestions. They were anticipated. They assumed I would simply hand it over. The home, my future, I'm at peace. Until someone else needed it more, it was as if it were mine. However, I had knowledge that they did not. I had no intention of impressing anyone. I wasn't attempting to prove a point or outrun them. I simply had had enough of being the fallback option. And at last, I was prepared to live on my own. A week passed while I waited, pretending nothing had changed for an entire week. While this peaceful delight buzzed through every part of me, I had completed the task. I put my signature on the documents, make the deposit. To be sure, I went through each number 2 or even 3 times. I owned it. A tiny cedar home outside of Monroe, nestled between pine woods. A pair of bedrooms. The kitchen is bright. I could really dig my hands into that yard. It wasn't large. It wasn't ostentatious. However, it was peaceful. Additionally, I wanted to inform them not for their consent or approval, however. A part of me still desired their pride. I therefore waited till dinner on Saturday. Same folks, same table. Paper towels were being knocked over as Lara's children ran in circles. Her husband, Nathan, hardly raised his head from his phone. Once more, Mom was discussing the cost of the lettuce. Quiet as usual, Dad simply nodded and sliced his steak. And I said it amidst all of that commotion. I purchased a home. Everything came to a halt. Forks were suspended in midair. Even the children fell silent. You purchased it. Lara spoke slowly. As in, it's finished. Last one. I gave a nod. Indeed. Last week. I signed. The end of the month is the move-in date. My mother sat up straighter, putting her palm to her chest as if she had just learned of a death. Have you decided already? She inquired. She went on. You knew we were looking for a house for you. The final word, we, sent a chill down my spine. Who are we? I inquired. Lara didn't recoil. Nathan and I, Mom's been looking with our help. The greatest schools are close to the Maple Street residence. At last, Ellie and Brandon would have separate rooms. I blinked. Hold on, rooms of their own. You all keep bringing up that house as if I were meant to purchase it for your family. Quiet. And then, at last, my father said, you're the only one in the family with a stable income. Rachel, families are about supporting one another. I gave him a direct look. You believe that helping entails sacrificing the life I created, only to make life more comfortable for someone else. I looked at Mom. Are you really expecting me to purchase a home so that I can raise someone else's children? She spoke in a stern but calm tone. You live by yourself. You operate remotely. The space isn't being used by you. Lara is having difficulties. Her children require additional space. It's just sensible. It was there. Not a proposal, not a conversation, a choice. Made already. Without me, but for me. At last, Nathan spoke up. I can remodel the space if you want to make it uniquely yours. No fee. Adjust it as you see fit, as if he had volunteered to repaint my skin. I gazed at him. I faced Lara once more. I wasn't even asked. You had plans, as if I were nothing more than a living wallet. She gave me one of those shrugs that people give when they've already made up their minds. She remarked, You've always been the one with the responsibility. I assumed you would understand. Rach, I'm stuck. I've never felt the sense of security you do. I got to my feet at that point. I worked to create that security for 10 years, not taking vacations, refusing every impulse, living close, deliberately. I deserved this tranquility. The piercing, tremulous sound of my mother's voice cut in. This family is being betrayed because of a house. I laughed because it was so crazy that it nearly shattered me, not because it was funny. This has nothing to do with a house, I stated. You think that unless you all approve of it, I can't have my own life. I surveyed the table. Nobody inquired about my happiness. Congratulations. No one said, not even a grin. Just a letdown. Anger assumptions. Lara yelled. You're splitting up this family over a dumb plot of land. Without saying another word, I headed to the door. I paused, hand on the knob. Then, quietly and steadily, it's not an inane plot of land. It's the first thing I've ever owned entirely. I also won't say I'm sorry for wanting a life I don't have to rent to other people. I then left, didn't turn around, didn't force the door shut, didn't weep. It hurt though. God, that evening, when I returned to my flat, it was like entering a cave after leaving a combat zone. Keep quiet. Still. It's empty in a way that just serves to highlight your sense of isolation rather than to provide solace. I didn't switch the lights on. I didn't take a seat. I simply stood in the dark, keys still in hand, chest hollow as if I had pulled something out of me or left anything behind. The phone then began to buzz. My mother was the first. 3 consecutive missed calls. Then came a wall of text that was so lengthy that I had to scroll over it. You must regain your composure. It's not AGAME. Don't allow pride to destroy the bonds that our family has formed. Everything we've constructed. I stared at the phone after placing it on the kitchen table. Buzz. Once more. This time. Dad, give me a call. And it continued. Lara, Aunt Joanne. I even received a message from my cousin, whom I hadn't seen in 2 years. Don't abandon the people who brought you up. That's when it dawned on me. They had no concerns about me. They weren't pleased with me. They were upset that I had deviated from the script. They didn't consider my house to be their home. For them, it was the answer to their issues. And because I had refused, I was self-centered. Not grateful, Chili. It's amusing how quickly the plot shifts once you stop acting out the part they put you in. The following day, as the sun attempted to peek through the blinds, I perched on the side of my bed. I allowed myself to feel it. Not only the rage, but also the sorrow. Because, well, I was in mourning, not the death of relatives. However, the insight that perhaps I never had them as much as I believed. I remembered being 11, in this opulent studio with glittering costumes and mirrored walls. Lara had jazz dance classes after school. I received math instruction because you're smart. Rachel, don't fall behind. She purchased a brand new Jeep for college when she was 17. I received Dad's old Civic, which had a damaged bumper and a don't be picky tag. She received full funding to study out of state, to pay for community college. I took night classes and worked part-time. I didn't whine either. Not once, I said to myself. The stable one is you. You must be responsible for them. It will be your turn. However, they attempted to take that as well when it was eventually my turn. Now I was the bad guy, the cold-hearted one, the self-centered sibling who prioritized peace over sacrifice. I switched off my phone. For the first time in years, no messages, not guilty. There was only silence, and it was lovely. I did something that week that I hadn't done for a while. I made a choice for myself. I gave the relocation firm a call. Everything was planned on a weekday when they would all be too busy to notice or get involved. I updated my phone number. I deleted my social media accounts. My mail was redirected. I wasn't hiding. I was defending my creation. My new residence was more than just a house. In the sand, it was a line, and I secretly needed to know that I was capable of drawing it. On a Monday morning, I moved out, calm, overcast, and cool. The truck arrived on schedule. I laughed a little when the driver called me ma'am and grinned. I felt less like a grown lady entering her dream and more like a girl packing up a diary. However, as I stood at that new home's entryway, keys in hand, the air heavy with freedom and pine, something changed. I refrained from crying. I didn't chuckle. All I did was breathe. Additionally, the air didn't feel borrowed for once. The first week of living in the new home. I'm not even sure how to explain it. Yes, it was quiet, but not in a way that left you feeling alone. That was the type that envelops you. Give yourself a breath. Enables you to hear your own ideas once more. I would awaken each morning to the sun peeking through the trees. The floor feels cool underfoot. I would prepare tea exactly the way. I prefer it. Strong, sugar-free, steeped for 2 minutes, and never longer. Nobody gave an eye roll. Why I didn't brew coffee instead was not questioned. Nobody was in need of anything. And I came to a realization I hadn't had in a while. For the first time in my adult life, I wasn't constructing things around other people. No concessions, don't bend. I didn't wait for approval from others before taking action. I applied olive green paint to my office, purchased a tomato trellis for the outdoor space, using my own hands. I put together a small patio furniture, something I used to tell myself wasn't practical. Right now, it was not necessary. Obviously, it was I never would have imagined that I would join a neighborhood gardening group. The first meeting took place at Grace's house. Late 50s, serene voice, summertime dreamy lavender garden scent. Nobody there inquired about my family's opinions. Nobody was interested in my previous residence or the fact that I appeared to have gone weeks without sleep. They inquired about the types of soil. Did I have any experience pruning roses? If I had ever attempted snap pea cultivation, I hadn't. However, I desired to. Liam and I met there, soft-spoken, mid-30s, creator of landscapes. When I complained that my irrigation system kept choking out at night, he offered to help fix it, avoided flirting, didn't ask questions. Just arrived with a toolbox and spoke poetically about drip lines and sun angles. He didn't inquire about my relatives. I didn't question why I appeared reserved or silent. And truthfully, I hadn't experienced such kindness from anyone in a long time until that moment. It also improved at work. Without the incessant chatter, the texts of guilt, the tug-of-war of emotions, I had space to reconsider. I presented a project that I had been working on for several months, a thorough finance strategy for creative small enterprises. Within a week, it was approved. My boss, Karen, gave me a personal call and said, "Recently, you've been on fire. Continue. You are on our radar for the mentor track." And for the first time, I thought I could say yes without fearing the consequences. Saturdays were the farmer's market is reached by bicycle, fresh basil, zest for conversation with elderly women. I once assisted a young girl in selecting the appropriate onion for her mother's stew. Her mother asked me to join a book club 2 days later. Yes, I replied, as simple as that, since I was able to, since nobody would subsequently hurl it in my face. Because I was the source of every yes now. I would occasionally still come across pictures online, someone reposting a birthday photo of her children squished into a messy apartment, or tagging Lara. It hurt to read the captions. Making do. True family doesn't abandon you. However, I stopped allowing them to harm me. The story was unknown to them. When my mother looked me in the eye and said, "They weren't there, you're letting us down," Lara didn't say anything to them. "It is your turn to share. You have always had more." Nobody had inquired about what I had to give up to get here. Nobody has inquired about the price I paid for making my own decision. But wasn't that the main idea? No one applauded me for choosing myself. There was quiet, with room, longer mornings, deep breaths, and the realization that I no longer lived for the admiration of those who clapped only when I sacrificed something. I had lost my anger. Just finished. I'm done pleading for attention. I'm done gaining affection by being helpful. I'm done folding in half to save others from having to stretch. She arrived at the end of October, gentle wind and cool air. I was organizing spring seed packs while I sat by the window. Chamomile, thyme, purple basil. There was only one ring of the doorbell. I assumed it was Grace. Or Liam. Someone from book group, perhaps. However, after peering through the peephole, Lara was the one. It appeared as though she hadn't brushed her hair in a few days because it was pulled back. Eye fatigue. My face was slimmer than I had recalled, as if it were her only remaining possession. She held an old tote bag. Ben and Ellie were standing behind her. The children remained silent, smaller than they ought to have appeared, not a sound, no grins, simply waiting. I didn't say anything, but I opened the door. Nor did Lara. Not immediately. She glanced toward the stairs below. She remarked. I wasn't sure I was still allowed to knock. There was no sharpness to her voice. Don't feel guilty. Not at fault. Just a hollow object. They weren't invited in. However, I didn't discard them. We simply remained there, attempting to predict what would happen while inhaling the same chilly air. Ellie then muttered, Aunt Rachel, Mommy said we could see your garden if we were good. I knelt down and looked her in the eyes. I answered, I just put in some white chrysanthemums. Do you like those? She gave a nod. That was it. Not a big reunion, no big embrace, just a little silence. A tiny favor from a young child who hadn't requested any of this. They entered, not as visitors, not precisely as family, more like individuals who had been a part of something and were unsure of how to get back into it. Silently, we sipped tea at the kitchen table. The children were tiptoeing between flower beds, as if they could destroy anything if they moved too quickly. And Lara observed them through the window. Then she stated it in a whisper. I assumed you would accept it. The home, the wait, as usual as our mother taught us. She gave me the expression of someone who had suddenly realized something too late. However, you are more powerful than us. You were always more powerful. I simply hadn't noticed it until today. I didn't respond. I didn't express forgiveness to her. I didn't claim that it was okay since it wasn't. Like everyone else, she had thought of me as her safety net. However, I was no longer, I informed her. I'm not strong. I simply had enough of being treated like a slave. She gave a nod, glassy eyes. There is hardly any voice. I was mistaken. I believed that because we were sisters. I could enter at any time. But now I realize I ought to have knocked. That stayed with me. I ought to have knocked. I took the kids to the town's book fair 3 weeks later, giggling as if they had never experienced sadness. Ellie and Ben went around selecting picture books. There, Liam was operating an art station beneath a large maple tree. Ben requested watercolor paints from him. Ellie sat next to him as if she were supposed to. Liam gave me a lovely grin and kind eyes. He remarked, these two seem to have found their quiet corner. I also gave a nod because, well, perhaps they had. That day, not everything recovered. Not all scars vanished. However, something broke open, not in a manner that would cause pain to flare up again. However, in a manner that allowed light to eventually shine through. Weeks went by. I continued to live. Book club, rides on bikes, calm workdays with my favorite mug of fresh tea and basil on the ledge. Then, one evening, I received a message as I was completing a client portfolio from Lara. I'm trying to find employment, not requesting assistance. I just wanted to let you know that I'm now managing. I appreciate you not slamming the door. I didn't respond. Not immediately, I simply gazed at the garden, the raised beds in the moonlight, the swaying rosemary, and I allowed silence to descend. I received an email from HR a week later. Candidates for the new financial training program are being evaluated. You were mentioned as a reference by one applicant, Lara Jennings. Everyone deserves a fresh start, but you have to take that first step on your own, she said. Quoting from your blog, I went cold. She didn't utilize my words because of that, but because this time, she hadn't requested assistance. She simply took a step. Perhaps that was sufficient. When I returned home from the market the next weekend, I discovered a note taped to my fence. The penmanship of a child, uneven, sincere. I assisted Mommy in writing her resume, Aunt Rachel. Although I am teaching her, she still dislikes ginger tea. PSHAV, you planted any further purple flowers. Ellie was the one. I refrained from crying. However, I stood on the porch for a while, clutching that note and inhaling the scent of lavender, chilly wind, and soil. And I felt a softening inside. It's not that I forgot, but because I was at last able to decide who I wanted to remember. Lara entered the same building where I worked a few weeks later, not as the sister of Rachel, not as the girl who was given everything, only herself. She nodded without saying anything when she spotted me in the lobby. It wasn't big. However, it was sufficient. Liam delivered a basket of oranges and some rosemary sprigs that evening. Not a word, didn't require one. I opened the window, made some tea, and let myself to be surrounded by the aroma of the soil. The wind and all I had planted, this home, this existence, was mine. And now the ones who entered it, they were skilled knockers. From here, I have no idea where life will take me. However, I am aware of this. Applause is not my life. Guilt is not what I live for. I live in tranquility. And like a garden I've planted my entire life, I protect that tranquility. Because occasionally, the most authentic type of family is not the person who is related to you. It's the one who rings, waits, and doesn't enter until you greet them. The line separating obligation from love might occasionally be the most difficult to draw. We are raised to believe that family is unrestricted giving, that silence is calm, and that sacrifice is love. However, genuine love does not require you to burn yourself alive in order to keep others warm. It doesn't require you to get smaller so that someone else can get longer. It takes guts to express something, particularly later in life. This is my life, and I'm worthy of living it how I want to. Not with resentment, not with pride, but out of calm regard for oneself. Those who genuinely care about you won't force you to pick between connection and tranquility. They will knock before going. Inside, rather of assuming, they will inquire. They will also discover that borders are doors with locks that open when confidence is gained, not walls. Because occasionally, self-choice is the most extreme act of love, and at last, having meaning.